In 1957, a small cardboard box was discovered in the woods of Philadelphia. What was inside has haunted investigators for decades. Some crimes are never solved, and some stories never stop haunting us. Tonight, you will hear one of them. Picture this, a cold February evening. The trees stand bare, their skeletal branches clawing at the gray Philadelphia sky. The wind whistles through the woods, carrying a chill that seeps deep into your bones. Now, imagine walking alone down a dirt road, far from the comfort of the city lights. Your footsteps crunch against the frozen ground. You feel it, the heaviness of the silence, the eerie quiet that makes you second-guess whether you should even be there. And then you see it. A small, battered cardboard box, tossed carelessly in the brush like garbage. It's old, worn, barely holding its shape. Most people might have walked past. Most people might have ignored it. But curiosity is powerful. And in 1957, one man stepped closer and lifted the lid. What he found inside would not only haunt his own life, it would haunt the city of Philadelphia. It would haunt America. And it would echo through the next 7 decades as one of the most disturbing, chilling mysteries in true crime history. Inside that box was the lifeless body of a young boy. A child, no more than 4 to 6 years old. His body was wrapped in a cheap, tattered blanket. His small frame bore the marks of neglect and worse. Bruises, scars, evidence of suffering. But the strangest part, no one knew who he was. No family ever came forward. No missing child's report matched his face. That it was as if this little boy had appeared out of nowhere, lived a life unseen, and was discarded like trash in a box too small for the weight of his tragedy. They would call him the boy in the box. For decades, his story would become one of America's darkest cold cases. Theories swirled. Suspects were named. But answers? Answers never came. This is not just a story of crime. This is not just a story of horror. This is the story of a child erased from existence. A story of silence louder than screams. A story where every clue only deepened the mystery. Tonight, we go back into those woods. We open the box once more, and we relive the chilling case of the boy the world tried to forget. But before we begin, ask yourself this. How does a child vanish from the world, leaving behind no name, no family, and no voice? Only a box? And when we finally uncover his identity, will that bring us closer to the truth, or only reveal that some nightmares never end? This is the haunting case of the boy in the box. Stay with me, because once you step into this story, you'll realize why it has been called America's most haunting mystery. Philadelphia, February 25th, 1957. The winter was merciless that year. Sharp winds cut through the trees, and the barren woods stood like skeletal sentinels, looming silently over the frozen ground. The kind of silence that makes every footstep echo. The kind of silence that feels unnatural. It was here, in a desolate patch of land off Susquehanna Road, that fate would lead a man toward one of the most haunting discoveries in American history. The man was out in the woods, not for leisure, not for beauty, but simply walking, scanning the brush. Some say he was checking his muskrat traps. Others say he was curious about discarded debris scattered in the area. Whatever the reason, he could not have known that what he stumbled upon that day would haunt generations to come. Through the thickets, half hidden in the weeds, sat a simple cardboard box. Weathered, tattered, unremarkable at first glance. The kind of box one might pass by without a second thought. But something about it, something about the way it lay there, oddly out of place, drew his attention. He approached slowly, each step crunching on frozen leaves. The box was small, worn edges, taped once, now peeling away. A blanket, faded, checkered, old, was stuffed haphazardly inside. And then he saw it. At first, he thought it was a discarded doll, lifeless and pale. But as he leaned closer, the truth hit him with an icy shock that stole the breath from his lungs. Inside the box was the body of a boy. The child was small, fragile, no more than 4 to 6 years old. His tiny frame was wrapped in the blanket, his hair crudely chopped as though someone had attempted to disguise him. Bruises marked his body, faint but unmistakable. Signs of abuse, signs of cruelty. He had no clothes, no shoes, just the blanket and his broken, lifeless form. His body was emaciated, suggesting neglect. Starvation. His eyes closed forever, but you can almost imagine the fear that must have filled them in his final hours. In that moment, the woods seemed to close in. The man stared, frozen. The silence pressed down heavier than before, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Somewhere, far away, traffic hummed faintly from the city. But here, in this lonely corner of Philadelphia, time stood still. Imagine what must have gone through his mind. Do you run? Do you call the police? Or do you look away, pretending you never saw? In 1957, such discoveries weren't common. It was shocking, unthinkable. And yet, here it was, the lifeless body of a boy abandoned like trash. The man hesitated. For hours, perhaps. He did not call the police right away. Fear, uncertainty, or perhaps he didn't want to involve himself. Some accounts suggest he was reluctant to be connected to such a grisly find. But eventually, the truth of what lay in that box could not remain hidden. When the authorities finally arrived, they confirmed the horror. The boy's age was estimated between 4 and 6. His weight, just 30 pounds. His hair crudely chopped, some clumps of it still clinging to his skin. His small hands and feet, bruised, battered. His body told a story of neglect, of pain, of violence. A story no child should ever endure. No one knew his name. No one recognized his face. To the police, to the world, he was simply the boy in the box. And so began one of the most chilling mysteries Philadelphia had ever seen. A case that would span decades, leaving investigators, journalists, and ordinary citizens grasping for answers in the dark. The discovery of the small cardboard box shocked Philadelphia. What began as a quiet evening in the woods had now become the center of a chilling mystery, and within hours, detectives arrived at the scene. They stepped out of their cars into the bitter cold, their flashlights slicing through the fog. There, under the glow of lanterns, lay the box, and inside it, the frail body of a young boy. The scene was grim. Every officer present knew they were staring into the face of tragedy. They carefully lifted the boy from the box, wrapped in nothing but a cheap, worn blanket. He was small, fragile, estimated to be no older than 6. Bruises marked his skin. His limbs were thin, almost skeletal, as if life itself had been starved out of him. His hair had been recently cut, but unevenly, as though done in haste, or perhaps to disguise him. The detectives began their work. Every inch of the scene was cataloged. Evidence tags were placed on the box, on the blanket, on the patch of earth where he had been abandoned. A police photographer's flashbulb captured the haunting images that would later be etched into the minds of investigators for decades. They dusted for prints, they examined the box, they searched the ground for footprints. But the soil was frozen, hardened by winter. Nothing, not even a shoe print remained. At the morgue, the coroner's report painted an even darker picture. The boy bore signs of abuse. Old injuries, long healed, hinted at years of suffering. Malnourishment was evident. His ribs protruded. His body weighed barely 30 pounds. And yet, no one had reported him missing. Fingerprints were taken. Photographs were circulated. Detectives scoured every missing child report across the state, across the country. But there was no match. It was as if this boy had never existed. The blanket, a simple flannel covering with faded blue and white checks, was examined closely. Police traced its pattern, searching manufacturers, retailers, even door-to-door sales records. But the trail went cold. The haircut, uneven and jagged, was studied for clues. Had it been done by a parent? A stranger? Was it a desperate attempt to change his appearance, to prevent someone from recognizing him? Or was it the final, careless act of whoever disposed of his body? Philadelphia police worked tirelessly. They knocked on doors, hundreds of them, combing through neighborhoods, questioning families, and scanning school records. They searched orphanages, foster homes, hospitals. And yet, no one came forward. No family, no guardian, no mother. The boy had no name. Detectives pinned photographs on their corkboards. They drew lines connecting clues. A blanket, a box, a haircut, a boy. But the connections led nowhere. Every promising lead dissolved into another dead end. Newspapers carried the story. Headlines screamed, "Unidentified boy found in box." Citizens wept. Strangers lined up at the police station, desperate to help identify him. But as the weeks passed, hope began to fade. The boy became known only as the boy in the box. In July of 1957, after months of searching for answers, authorities buried him in a small potter's field in Philadelphia. His casket was tiny, his grave marked with only a simple headstone. It read, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy." And there, beneath the cold earth, the boy in the box rested, nameless, faceless, and still surrounded by questions that haunted the city. Questions that, even decades later, would refuse to die. As months turned into years, the mystery of the boy in the box grew heavier. Detectives had little to go on, yet they refused to let the case fade. And so began a series of theories, suspects, and possibilities that pulled investigators down countless dark roads. Not far from the site where the box was discovered stood a foster home. The proximity was impossible to ignore. Investigators wondered, could the boy have come from there? They searched the property, spoke with caretakers, and questioned the children. Rumors spread that one of the blankets at the home resembled the one found in the box. Whispers grew louder. Was the boy abandoned to protect the home's reputation? Was his death being covered up? But after weeks of digging, no conclusive evidence was found. The foster home, though suspicious in the public's eye, was never directly linked to the boy. And yet, doubt lingered. Then came one of the most bizarre turns in the case. A New Jersey psychic contacted police, claiming to have seen the boy's fate in a vision. She described a small house, specific details about a location, and even a woman connected to the boy. Investigators, desperate for leads, followed her directions. To their shock, the house she described was real, and it matched her story, almost exactly. Inside, they found a bassinet similar to the box, old blankets, resembling the one that wrapped the boy. For a moment, hope surged. Had a breakthrough finally come? But in the end, there was nothing solid. No evidence tying the family to the child. The vision, though eerily close, remained just that, a vision. Others speculated that the boy suffered from a chronic illness. His frail body, malnutrition, and stunted growth suggested years of struggle. Could he have been institutionalized? Could a hospital have failed to report him missing? This theory only deepened suspicion. If true, someone had deliberately erased his records. Someone had ensured he would never be found. But once again, the trail went cold. Then, in the early 2000s, a woman only identified as M came forward with a disturbing claim. She said her mother had purchased the boy. Yes, purchased him, and subjected him to years of abuse. According to her, the boy was beaten, starved, and locked away. One night, after an outburst at the dinner table, he was killed. She claimed. Her mother panicked, cut his hair, and placed his body in the box before abandoning it in the woods. The story was horrific. It matched certain details known only to investigators. For a moment, it seemed this could finally be the answer. But there was a problem. M was mentally unstable. Her credibility crumbled under scrutiny. Without physical evidence, her confession became another ghost in the case file. Some even believed the boy was connected to a traveling circus. The theory suggested he had been an unwanted child of performers, hidden from the world, and later discarded when his health declined. It was a theory born more of desperation than fact. But in the absence of answers, every possibility was entertained. Each theory, each suspect, each lead carried the weight of possibility, and yet every time, it collapsed. No arrests were made. No parents came forward. No one claimed the boy. The case grew colder with each passing season. The boy in the box had become a riddle wrapped in silence. His small body carried secrets that no one could unlock, and the city of Philadelphia, year after year, could only whisper the same question into the night. Who was he? And who silenced him forever? Decades passed. The boy in the box became less a case and more a legend. A grim reminder whispered among detectives, journalists, and ordinary Philadelphians. A puzzle with missing pieces. A story that refused to end. And then, in 2019, everything changed. By the 2000s, DNA had become the greatest weapon in solving cold cases. Tiny strands of hair, a drop of blood, a fragment of skin under fingernails. Things once ignored suddenly became keys to unlocking decades of silence. For the boy in the box, this was the last hope. Forensic scientists exhumed his body once again, this time armed with the tools of modern science. They carefully collected his DNA, hoping and praying that somewhere in a database, a match would appear. For years, there was nothing. The databases were silent. The boy remained a mystery. But in 2021, investigators turned to a new technique, a revolutionary method that had already solved some of the world's most impossible crimes: genetic genealogy. With genetic genealogy, investigators don't need a perfect match. They only need relatives, a second cousin, a distant uncle, a single thread of DNA that can lead backward through time. Detectives partnered with experts who began building a family tree. Hundreds of names, thousands of connections, branches that stretched across generations. And slowly, after months of painstaking work, the tree led back to him. On December 8, 2022, more than 65 years after his tiny body was found, inside a discarded box, police in Philadelphia finally stood before the cameras and said his name: Joseph Augustus Zarelli, 4 years old. Born January 13, 1953. A child who, for decades, was known only as America's unknown child. Finally, the boy in the box had an identity. It was a moment that sent chills across the nation. News outlets everywhere carried his name. For the first time in over half a century, Joseph was no longer anonymous. He was real. He was someone. He was home. But even answers bring new questions. Detectives revealed that Joseph was born in West Philadelphia. His mother, a young woman named Mary Elizabeth. His father, Augustus J. Zarelli. Both are now dead. Both took their secrets with them. Joseph had siblings still alive today. But investigators refused to release details, out of respect and perhaps out of fear. For what Joseph's family knew or did not know remains a shadowy, complicated mystery. Was he abandoned? Was he abused? Was he killed by someone within his own bloodline? The truth of his final hours remains buried in silence. Joseph's identity did not end the investigation. It only opened a new chapter. Detectives are still piecing together what happened to him. His case file, once thought frozen in time, is now alive again. Witnesses are being re-interviewed, family ties re-examined, old theories weighed against new facts. For some, the revelation was closure. For others, it was heartbreak, because even with his name restored, the brutal question still lingers: who killed Joseph Augustus Zarelli, and why? Yet despite the lingering shadows, Joseph's case became a symbol of hope. He represents every nameless victim, every unsolved mystery, every story left untold. For more than 60 years, strangers visited his grave, laying flowers, whispering prayers, and vowing that he would not be forgotten. They called him America's unknown child. And now, at last, he is unknown no longer. The science of DNA gave Joseph his name. But names are not enough. The search for justice continues. Because until his killer is known, until the silence breaks, Joseph's story will remain unfinished. Some stories are not meant to be forgotten. Some names refuse to be erased by time. For more than 60 years, Joseph Augustus Zarelli was not a child. He was a headline, a mystery, a ghost. They called him America's unknown child, a symbol of innocence stolen, of a question that time could not answer. People who never knew him, who never heard his laugh, who never saw him smile, still carried him in their hearts. Strangers visited his grave. They laid flowers. They whispered prayers. And in those moments, Joseph was not forgotten. He was loved by thousands, by millions, by a country haunted by the shadow of a little boy in a box. Then came the day, December 8, 2022, the day the unknown child was given back his name. And in that moment, Joseph was no longer faceless, no longer voiceless, no longer lost to time. But with his name came heavier questions. Who failed him? Why was he left in the cold? What kind of cruelty allows a child to die unseen, unheard, unloved? Some believe his parents knew more than they ever admitted. Others point to a web of lies, secrets, and shame. The truth? Still locked in silence. Even with DNA, even with modern science, even with Joseph's identity restored, His story is unfinished because justice is not found in a name. Justice is found in truth, and the truth still hides in the shadows. Joseph's story reminds us that monsters do not always hide under the bed. Sometimes they live in our homes. Sometimes they wear familiar faces. And sometimes the scariest crimes are the ones no one dares to speak of. Tonight, as you turn off the lights, remember him. Remember the boy in the box. Remember Joseph Augustus Zarelli, not as a headline, not as a mystery, but as a child, a boy who deserved love, laughter, and life. And remember this, the box was only ever a container. The real prison was silence, and silence is the deadliest crime.